Hey folks, welcome back to Hudson Valley Prepping and Survival, and today we got something super interesting for you. This is something that I've never experienced, and I don't think most of us in the preparedness community have experienced this potentially deadly hazard that exists in our environment. I'm talking about volcanoes. Let's get into it.
Let's get this showboat on the road, shall we? Yeah, boy. We did it. Let's see. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That hill you see over in the distance there, you can just barely make out the fire tower on the top of that sucker. Stitching Mountain, there's some rain coming down through the valleys. Fulfilling promises. One subscriber at a time. That's Hudson Valley Prepping and Survival. Howdy, folks.
Welcome back to
Hudson Valley Prepping and Survival.
Scientists are currently expressing concern about several volcanoes, including Mount Rainier in Washington, Mount Spur near Anchorage, Alaska, and the Axial Seamont, an undersea volcano off the Oregon coast, due to signs of increased activity and potential eruptions. I found a fantastic article from Alaska's news source, and this one has to deal with your vehicles, right? This is something that we don't often think about when it comes to a disaster like this, but there's some really important tips in here that I think everybody should know. So I'm going to run through the list for you here that they have on the article. We'll read from the article, and then we'll do a little deeper dive into these volcanoes and see, is it really even a threat? From Alaska's news source. In the event of an ash eruption from Mount Spur, there are several maintenance tips a mechanic recommends taking. Experts are monitoring volcanic activity at Mount Spur, which currently indicates possible future eruptions. Although not certain, should an eruption occur, scientists at the Alaska Volcano Observatory say Spur would spew ash clouds, not magma. The abrasive quality of the resulting ashfall will require caution in many spheres, like home protection, health precautions for both human and animal family members. Traveling by foot, plane, or car will pose a challenge during and following the ashfall. But John Stoner with the Alaska Spring Performance gave an overview of how to care for vehicles to prevent ash damage or unsafe situations. Before driving, the best thing to do is not to drive the vehicle. If you can stay home until the road conditions and the air quality are better. However, for those who are unable to avoid driving, he recommends rinsing the car and the radiator before starting it. However, avoid wiping ash to prevent scratches on paint or windows. Air filters. Fine ash in the air will also plug up air filters in vehicles. Owners should change the air filters several times after an eruption, Stoner said. In the time after an eruption, ash will remain on the road, causing faster accumulation in the filters than normal. To save money, Stoner recommends putting a pair of pantyhose over the air filter. Windshield wipers. Because ash causes scratch damage to surfaces when rubbed, wipers, Stoner said, it's crucial not to run windshield wipers dry over the ash. You want to make sure you have washer fluid spraying before you turn the wiper blades on. But unfortunately, most vehicles today, the wipers start sweeping as soon as the water comes, Stoner said. So try not to use them if you can. What will happen is the ash in your wiper blades will actually score and scratch the windshield. Stoner said because seeing clearly is a crucial part of safe driving, going without a clear windshield or not using the windshield wipers won't always be an option. Expect your windshield to be scratched, potentially, and your wiper blades to deteriorate rapidly. Oil. Car owners should continue their maintenance schedule as usual, Stoner said. But if there's an eruption, vehicles will require an oil change after driving in the ash. That's a fantastic article from the Alaska's news source, and I'll drop that guy right down in the comments section here, or I'll try and get it in the description section, but YouTube doesn't always allow me to do that. But I want to take a deeper dive into these volcanoes. I know Alaska has a lot of active volcanoes and some that they're currently watching, like Mount Spur, but I wanted to dig in and see how many volcanoes really go off in a typical year. So I typed it into Google, and this is what it gave me. On average, around 50 to 80 volcanoes erupt each year somewhere on Earth, with some eruptions occurring within a few days or hours of each other. Frequency, 50 to 80 volcanoes erupt annually, meaning there's one eruption every week. See, recent years have seen eruptions from volcanoes like Vericillion in Chile, Mount Loboti, Laki-Laki in Indonesia, I can't even pronounce some of these things, in Iceland, Popocatépetl in Mexico, Mount Etna in Italy, and Shanunovich in Russia. Ongoing eruptions. As of February 21st, 2025, the Global Volcanism Project noted 45 volcanoes with continuing eruptions. Since 1950, there have been 2,208 eruptions recorded from 347 volcanoes, with an average of 63 eruptions ongoing per year. On average, around 34 new eruptions begin each year. 2025 data. There were 46 confirmed eruptions from 46 different volcanoes, 4 of those being new eruptions that started during the year. And it's only March. Very interesting. Now, my next question for this thing was, how many volcanoes are currently in the United States, right? This is where I live, so that's my biggest concern. Being on the East Coast, it's not a huge concern, but ash clouds can travel all the way around the globe, so definitely something to keep an eye on. Let's see, and the United States has approximately 169 volcanoes. That's a whole lot more than I thought. You know, you think of things like Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, Yellowstone, right? There's a few lesser known ones, and we'll get into those right now. Many are located in Alaska and Hawaii, and others scattered through the western states. Alaska contains over 130 volcanoes. Interesting. That's a lot. Hawaii has Mauna Loa, the largest active volcano on the planet. The USGS has identified 18 volcanoes as very high threats based on their eruptive history, recent activity, and proximity to people. It says more than half of the 169 volcanoes could erupt explosively, sending ash up to 20 or 30,000 feet. Now, once that stuff gets up into the wind columns, it's going to carry it all the way across the United States and all the way across the globe. Volcanoes don't respect borders, folks. So the next thing that I looked up was high threat volcanoes in the U.S., and they go into detail about what they consider it to be the high threat. So Kilauea in Hawaii is at the top of the list. It's considered the most hazardous volcano in the U.S. due to its frequent eruptions and large populations living nearby. Mount St. Helens is number 2. It's known for explosive eruptions, and its proximity to populated areas make it a significant threat. Mount Rainier in Washington. Mount Rainier is the highest peak in the Cascadia region. It's a stratovolcano with a large amount of glacier ice, posing a threat to nearby cities like Seattle and Tacoma. Mount Hood in Oregon is designated as a very high threat volcano due to its history of eruptions, current activity, and proximity to downstream communities. The Lassen Volcanic Center in California. The Lassen Volcanic Center is a high-threat volcano due to its explosive nature and proximity to regional infrastructure and national park visitors. Newberry Volcano in Oregon. Newberry Volcano is considered a very high threat due to its potential for eruptions and the possibility of disrupting air travel with its ash clouds. The Three Sisters Volcanic Complex in Oregon. Three Sisters Volcanic Complex is considered a very high threat due to the surrounding communities, including Bend. Mount Shasta in California. Mount Shasta is considered one of the most potentially dangerous volcanoes in the United States due to its active nature and proximity to population centers. Augustine Volcano in Alaska. Augustine Volcano is considered one of the most potentially dangerous in the case of an eruption because of its proximity to the Kenai Peninsula in Anchorage. Rebout Volcano in Alaska. Rebout stands a mammoth 10,000 feet above sea level and is considered one of the most dangerous of the 51 active volcanoes in Alaska. Makushin Volcano in Alaska. Makushin ranks in the highest threat category identified by the USGS. That's pretty scary. Mount Spur in Alaska is listed as a very high threat and the most recent addition to the USGS National Volcanic Threat Assessment. Glacier Peak in Washington. Glacier Peak is a stratovolcano in the northern Cascadia volcanic arc, designated as a very high threat by the USGS. And then the last one on the list is Mount Baker in Washington. Mount Baker is included in the very high threat category because of the volcanic activity and proximity to people. So they list them as threats because of their activity and how close population centers are to them, right? But that really wasn't the question that I was looking to have answered. The answers that I wanted was, what ones are they actually worried about erupting right now? So scientists are currently expressing concern about several volcanoes, including Mount Rainier in Washington, Mount Spur near Anchorage, Alaska, and the Axial Seamount, an undersea volcano off the Oregon coast, due to signs of increased activity and potential for eruptions. While Mount Rainier hasn't erupted in 1,000 years, they are keeping an eye on it. Mount Spur has measured significantly elevated volcanic gas emissions, and increased seismic activity suggests a potential eruption in the coming weeks or months. So keep an eye on Mount Spur. The Axial Seamount off the Oregon coast, this undersea volcano is located about 470 kilometers off the coast of Oregon. It's also drawing attention due to signs of imminent activity, including surface swelling and magma building, according to Science News. The other volcanoes of concern is obviously the Yellowstone supervolcano. I think if you're into preparedness at all, I think you know about Yellowstone. While a large eruption is unlikely in the near future, scientists are closely monitoring seismic activity and underground pressure for any signs of potential eruption at Yellowstone. Camp Flegrei in Italy, the caldera near Naples, is another area of concern, with residents living within the caldera itself facing significant volcanic risk. In Askja in Iceland, the volcano has shown signs of impending eruptions that could cause a catastrophic event there in Iceland. So apparently, folks, volcanoes are a bigger threat than we actually knew. They just haven't gotten to our neck of the woods yet. That's all. So some strategies that we can develop to be a little better prepared for something like this. The biggest one is know the risk. You know, here in New York, volcanic eruption is not high on my may happen list, right? But if you live in Washington State or close to Washington State, Oregon, if you live anywhere near one of the places that I mentioned in this video, this should be on your radar. So you stay informed, you know the risk, make sure you understand the hazards that you're going to be facing, right? And you should absolutely have an emergency plan with your family. Meeting points, ways to get in touch with each other, a comms plan, a no comms plan, right? Just in case nothing works, what do? Well, you already know what to do because you had a no comms plan. Make sure you have a well-stocked emergency supply kit, guys. You need water, at least 1 gallon per day per person, non-perishable food, your first aid kit, your flashlights. On top of all that, you're gonna want a respirator of some sorts, N95 mask or dust masks at a bare minimum. If you can get your hands on something better, I highly recommend that you do such. You're also going to want goggles. You know, those respirators don't come with goggles, most of them, and that's gas mask territory. So that's something that you're going to want to have in case of a volcanic eruption. You're not going to be able to breathe through that ash, guys. It's going to take you down fast. You're also going to want long sleeve shirts and pants, battery operated radios. Those are super important, both one-way and two-way communication radios. That way you can hear the local news and contact loved ones should you need to. Don't forget to bring your medication, copies of all your important documents. If you're bugging out from a volcano, there's no telling if you're going back home. So make sure you bring all the important things with you, especially your pets. During an eruption, you want to follow evacuation orders immediately. If you're indoors, close the doors and windows, seal off all your air vents. You don't want any of that outside ash getting into your home. If you're outdoors, make sure you protect yourself from the ash fall. You don't want that stuff on you, guys. You definitely want to avoid driving in heavy ash fall. It's going to reduce the visibility so much, and like we talked about earlier, that's going to plug up your car's running system. Not a good idea. After an eruption, you want to stay informed about the safety advisories. Avoid areas affected by lava flows or lahars. Be cautious when cleaning up ash and make sure you wear protective gear. And don't forget to check on your neighbors and your loved ones. We all got to look out for each other, folks. This has been Hudson Valley Prepping and Survival. Stay safe out there.